Hi, good evening, everyone. So, as promised, for this recorded lecture, what I'll be discussing would be chapter 6, in terms of just the cost flow assumptions and taking a deep dive into the more advanced topics when it comes to inventory accounting. So, before anything else, just wanted to wrap up basically the key ideas for chapter 6 tonight. And then tomorrow, I will be uploading also the answers in terms of ano ba yung mga exercises so that on Friday on our face-to-face classes we'll be able to discuss already what would be parang ano ba yung mga key important exercises that you should take note of in preparation for your quiz on Wednesday, right? So basically, before I proceed, wanted to highlight lang the three things that I wanted you to master on chapter 5, particularly for those that were not able to attend kanina. So, number one, in terms of journal entries, the expectation here is that you've already mastered the 9 concepts under both the periodic and the perpetual method. But in terms of parang really doing well in terms of exams and exercises, we need to also identify 3 major ideas that that students often overlook. So number 1 would be in terms of solving for our net income. So like what I've mentioned earlier, basically for module 1, we were following the revenue minus expense is equal to net income and net loss. For module 2, we just made it a bit more difficult in terms of like taking into account merchandising operations. So they split their expense. So basically they split their expense in terms of both COGS and OPEX. Right? So from expense, naging COGS and OPEX. But then finally, you'll be able to get gross profit. So revenue minus COGS is equal to gross profit minus operating expense is equal to net income or net loss. So with this, ito yung first major equation that I want you to really be a master at. So sales revenue minus COGS is equal to gross profit. Gross profit minus OPEX is equal to net income or net loss. Yun lang. It's comprised of 2 parts. Sales revenue minus COGS is equal to gross profit, equation 1. Equation 2, gross profit minus OPEX is equal to net income or net loss. So, what are the things that we should watch out for? Well, the first thing that we will watch out for would be our sales revenue. Kasi, in more complicated examples, this could be net sales. Net sales. Right? And then when we say net sales, what would that be? Right? So what would net sales be? Well, net sales would be what? Net sales would be sales revenue minus SRA, sales returns amount, minus sales discount is equal to net sales. So if ever hindi nyo alam yung net sales, you always need to derive this, right? So please go back to the exam or the quiz kanina, right? So let's clear everything. Yeah. And move on to the next equation. So next equation would be our cost flow assumption. So basically, ang idea, and ito yung mas pinaka-importante that we'll really learn in terms of chapter 6, is that we always put our focus on our cost of goods available for sale. Okay? So the cost of goods available for sale is again the total amount of inventory that you can sell for that period. And that will be comprised of 2 things. Your beginning inventory and your cost of goods purchased. Your cost of goods purchased. Cost of goods purchased will together make up your cost of goods available for sale. Right? And in terms of cost of goods available for sale, dalawa lang naman yung mangyayari dyan. Either nabenta mo, so it will become cost of goods sold, or hindi nabenta, so ending inventory. So there are 2 equations that we can derive from this. What are the 2 equations? Number 1 is beginning inventory plus cost of goods purchased is equal to COGAS. Number 2 is ending inventory plus COGS is equal to COGAS. So inputs, beginning plus cost of goods purchased is equal to COGAS. Outputs, ending inventory plus COGS is equal to COGAS. So dito, na-derive yung equation na COGAS minus ending inventory equals COGS. Because shuffle lang to. Right? So, clear. That is our important equation. So, ano yung nagko-complicate? Ang nagko-complicate would be what? Ito. This is cost of goods purchased. And cost of goods purchased is equal to what? Your net purchases plus freight in. Plus freight in. Pag may freight out, ignore. Pag may freight out, ignore. Cost of goods purchased is net purchases plus freight in. And again, take note that net purchases is equal to purchase minus PRA, purchase return allowance minus PD. So, importante yung cost of goods purchased. Right? So, taking everything into account, ito yung ultimate equation. Beginning inventory plus cost of goods purchased is equal to COGAS. COGAS minus ending inventory is equal to COGS. Yung cost of goods purchased is a mix of net purchases plus freight in, right? And then lastly, the last thing that was overlooked usually is sa periodic, there are 3 major differences. First, periodic inventory system, yun yung may maarting journal entries. Pag purchases, it has purchase discount, purchase return allowance, etc. etc. Number 2, for periodic, kapag sales naman, wala siyang 2 journal entries. Isa lang yung journal entry. And then lastly, closing. So, again, to highlight, there will always be a physical count. Regardless kung perpetual, regardless kung periodic, there will always be a physical count. And you compare your records to your actual account. And palagi, we follow the actual count. Now, yung actual count, if it's lower than your record, just for like this example, so ang record was 21,600, yung count mo is 21,000, mas mababa yung count, that means that's an inventory shortage. For example, 21,600, ibang scenario sinabi, 25,000 yung count. That's gonna be an inventory overage. So, those are the 3 major concepts na we're gonna be following. Now, with that, that would be our clean break for us to go into mastering inventory. So now, this is my reminder for everyone in the class. Mastering inventory would probably be the most difficult out of the 3 topics that we will be discussing, just because sobrang daming new concepts. But the good news is it's broken down by major chunks. Now, I will run through the major chunks. I will tell you kung ano yung pinaka-time consuming but still pinaka-important also na part. And then, we can tackle each and every concept separately. So, I want you to master each concept separately and then complete the whole picture when it comes to mastering the inventory accounting system. So, ano ba yung mga topics na we'll be doing? These are our 6 major topics for mastering inventory. So, again, like what I mentioned, walang kwenta if you know 80% of the concept per part. It's better to know one major part 100% well rather than lahat may onti kayong alam pero hindi niyo pa completely mastered. So, master each part. So, what are the parts? Number 1, we'll talk about inventory inclusion. So, meaning, i-record ko ba as inventory or not from the point of view of the company. So, inventory inclusion. I suggest you master this because it's pinaka-easiest in terms of answering. Number 2, ito yung pinaka-marami. It has 6 different scenarios. that would be your cost flow assumptions. Ito yung pinakamatrabaho na intindihin. But ito yung pinaka-important. So you have to know cost flow assumptions. So LIFO, FIFO, etc. etc. Number 3, the other topics, short siya, pero I urge you to master it. Kasi most likely, maraming short problems around it. So pang bonus siya. So wag niyong kakalimutan these topics. Inventory valuation, LCNRV, estimation methods, and inventory errors. So, and then lastly, financial statement presentation. So, again, my suggestion is break this chapter down into 2. First part, aralin nyo muna yung cost flow assumptions. That's a major part that will take a lot of your time. But, wag nyong kakalimutan yung 4 na subtopics. Inventory inclusion, inventory valuation, estimation method, inventory errors. Pag yung 4 na yun na-gets nyo, technically ma-offset nyo yung learning in terms of cost flow assumption. So, treat it as 50%, 50%. 50% effort on cost flow assumptions, 50% on mastering the subtopics, right? So now that we're clear when it comes to the strategy, let's go to the first subtopic. So just a quick review, we already know that there are classifications of inventory, right? So paulit-ulit. So basically in terms of inventory, different lang naman siya in terms of merchandising and manufacturing company. For merchandising, isa lang, inventory lang. For manufacturing, may raw mats ka, may work in process, and finished goods. So these are your formal definitions. So raw materials, again, is in the form of materials or supplies to be consumed. Work in process is those that are in the process of production. And finished goods is basically those that are already finished or are held for sale. So in the pizza example, raw materials are your ingredients. Work in process is pag niluluto pa siya. And then finished goods is if it's a fully baked pizza. So related to inventory management is just-in-time operations. So basically, the idea lang naman here is that your inventory level should not be too little, meaning pangit yung company, puro out of stock. So pag 11-11, pag nag-search kayo sa Shopee, nakaka-turn off, di ba, pag out of stock sila. Pero, pag sobrang dami mo namang stocks, mahirap naman siya ibenta. So, kailangan ilalagay mo siya sa storage. So, mahal rin magbayad ng rent for warehouse. So, the idea here behind just-in-time is that your level of inventory should be at the proper amount and should be just in time for use in order to optimize your inventory level. So, yun lang yung idea behind just-in-time inventory management. Not too little, not too much, just in time. So with that, we will go into our first subtopic. So this whole part, I want you to master. Number 1 is inventory inclusions. Basically, under inventory inclusions, isa lang yung itatanong sa inyo. Which goods should be included in your inventory account from the point of view of the company that you're accounting for? Again, mayroong mga sasabihin sila, ito, description 1, description 2, description 3. The question is, what is your total inventory? And in essence, what they're asking lang would be, what should be included in your inventory account? And for me, our number 1 ultimate framework under inventory inclusion, ito lang yun. It's the legal test. If the entity or yung POV ng company nyo is the owner of the goods, yes, it should be included. So, are you the owner of the goods that in question? If yes, and you have the title, you can include. In terms of, ika-count mo siya as your inventory. Kapag hindi ikaw yung owner, you exclude. Again, inventory inclusions. Ang mga tanong lang dyan sa exercises would be, what is the inventory amount? Mayroong goods 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Out of those 5, ano yung i-include mo? And then after you know which one to include or exclude, ano yung ending balance or ano yung balance ng inventory account mo? And in order to answer this, we should do the legal test. So, sino ba yung may-ari? If may-ari yung entity na ina-account nyo and they have the title, we include. Kapag hindi sila, we exclude. So with that, there are 4 scenarios in terms of ano ba yung included. So ano ba yung mga included? Number 1 is we include inventory that the company owns and is on hand. So usually yung binibilang nyo as physical count, that's part of our inventory. Number 2, any goods in transit that tayo yung may ownership pa sa atin pa rin. We include that as our inventory. There are 2 scenarios. So when we say in transit, nasa truck, na either papunta sa'yo, freight in, or palabas sa company, freight out. Pero, yung caveat dito would be that kailangan ikaw yung nagbayad ng freight. So meaning, pag papunta sa'yo, it should be shipping point, may-ari ka na nung goods na yun. Pag palabas sa'yo, it should be destination point. So, just memorize muna na what is part of our inventory. 1, goods owned and on hand. Number 2, goods in transit under 2 scenarios. If you purchase your goods and you're the buyer and it's FOB shipping, meaning ikaw yung nagbayad ng freight. And pag nagbenta ka ng goods, ikaw yung seller and ikaw yung nagbayad ng freight or destination point. And then, number 3 and number 4 is basically goods that you own pero is not physically with you. So, one example is consignment, meaning nasa ibang tao pero technically ikaw pa rin yung may-ari, or itong goods temporarily held by others. So, in the hands of a salesman or those that are under trial pero ownership mo pa rin, those are included. So, simply, I want you to memorize these 4 scenarios. So, memorize muna. Now that you've memorized it, here comes the understanding. So, number 1, bakit ba natin ari yung goods owned on hand? So, basically, the assumption in the warehouse is that based on the physical count, binibilang pa rin natin. And that's, all of those goods are owned by us. Ano lang yung only exception? Kuwari may 50 items ka. Nagbilang ka, 50 items. Out of those 50, 5 nakalagay consigned from another company. Ilan yung inventory mo? 50 ba or 45? The answer is 45. So even if physically nasa iyo yung item, those consigned goods are under the ownership of another entity. So automatic, when there's a physical count, you ask yourselves, are these all owned by me or may portion bang out consigned from another entity? Kapag merong consigned, we exclude. Okay? So number 1, physical count that's owned by us, we include. Pero if there's goods that are physically with us, pero consigned lang natin, meaning hindi tayo yung may-ari, we exclude. So yun lang yung point for this first sub idea. So ito, these are just some ideas on ano ba yung mga process. So basically may segregation of duties na parang doble ng beses nila binibilang na dapat different people and pinipre-number nila yung inventory tags para make sure na walang mawala in terms of the count, right? Number 2, ito yung framework natin when it comes to goods in transit. So again, depende lang kung sino yung may-ari. And again, going back to chapter 5, ang merong may-ari ng goods is yung nagbayad ng freight. So, if it's a purchase goods in transit and you're the buyer, ikaw yung nagbayad ng freight papunta sa inyo. Right? Freight in. Therefore, it should be included. Those goods should be included. Pero, in terms of the point of view of seller, excluded siya. Right? Kasi hindi siya yung nagbayad. So, another scenario is, nag-purchase ka ng goods in transit pero destination point. Sino nagbayad pag destination point? So, again, para mas malinaw, I'll annotate. So, scenario 1 is nag-purchase ka ng goods. May 2 scenarios lang yan. Either FOB shipping point or destination point. If FOB shipping point, we include. Because, papunta sa'yo, ikaw yung nagbayad ng shipping point. So, during the truck phase, you already own the inventory. So that should include your count. On the other hand, pag destination point, we exclude. Di pa yan part ng inventory natin. Why? Kasi papunta siya sa'yo, pero sino yung nagbayad? Si seller. So, magta-transfer lang siya ng ownership pag na-receive mo na siya. So, hindi pa siya goods mo when it's in transit. So, when it's purchased, goods in transit, pag shipping point, we include. Pag destination point, we don't include. Next, we sell those goods in transit. Sold goods naman. So, tayo naman is the seller. So, palabas. So, we sold. Pag shipping point, sino nagbayad nito? Pag shipping point, ang nagbayad is si buyer. So, from that point on, ownership niya na. So, that's not part of our inventory. However, pag destination point, so exclude tayo pag shipping point under sold. Pag destination point, tayo nagbayad ng freight. From that point on, all the way until it's in transit, it's still our inventory, right? So, to summarize, you ask yourselves, first question, are the goods in transit, I purchased it or I sold it? If it's purchased, dito ka titingin. If it's sold, dito ka titingin. So, punta muna tayo sa purchased. Kapag purchased goods in transit, papunta sa'yo, you include only kapag shipping point. Kapag destination point, you don't include. Clear? On the other hand, kapag sold in goods in transit, if it's shipping point, we exclude. For destination point, we include. So, just to make sure na everyone's on the same page, this is another way of looking at it. Kapag shipping point kasi, the ownership passes to the buyer here. Pagpasakay na siya sa truck. Pero pag destination point, nagpapass lang yung ownership kapag na-receive na ni buyer on land. So, if hindi kayo masyadong ma-visual and mas ma-table kayo, if the FOB shipping point is yung term and sino yung may-ari? Yung buyer. So, FOB shipping point, ang may-ari is si buyer. So, kung ang point of view mo is buyer, you include that in your inventory account. But if you're the seller, you don't include. If FOB destination, who owns the goods is the seller. So, yung buyer, i-exclude niya, si seller lang yung mag-ano. Okay, so that's two things na. We're done now with physical count and goods in transit. Number 3 would be consigned goods. So, kanina ko pa mini-mention to. Basically, the consigned goods idea would be goods held for other parties. So, pare ako, meron akong stuffed toy shop. Now, nakita ko lucrative pala yung market sa Cebu. So, what I do is I message my friend that already also has a shop in Cebu. And then I was telling him, oh, pwede ba pabenta yung stuffed toy ko? So, ang gagawin ko, I'll give you 50 stuffed toys. And then, every time makabenta ka, profit ko pa rin, pero I'll give you a 3% commission. So, in that case, ako, I own it, pero pinapunta ko yung goods ko physically away from me and to Cebu. In that case, I'm a consigner. So, ako yung may-ari, pero pinadala ko yung goods somewhere else. On the other hand, yung friend ko, consignee siya. Physically, nasa kanya yung item, pero yung ownership, nasa consignor pa rin. So, ano yung idea sa consigned goods? Again, we go back to the legal test. Sino yung may-ari? If you're the consigner, when it comes to consigned goods, you include that in your inventory. If you're the consignee, you don't include that. So, again, kapag may physical count, 50 items, 5 out of those 50 is consigned goods. In that perspective, you're the consignee. Therefore, 45 lang yung inventory inclusions. So in a nutshell, that is our first subtopic. So ito is the easiest out of the 5 subtopics that we will be talking about. So let's apply the inclusions. So basically, the homework lang naman here or parang the exercise would be include or exclude. So on February nag-ship ka raw ng customer goods costing 800. The goods were shipped FOB shipping point. So, how do we analyze this? Number one, how I would analyze this is, ano ba POV ko? We ship to a customer. So, automatic, in my head, we're a seller. Okay, we're a seller. Now, what was the shipping idea? The shipping idea was FOB shipping point. So, meaning, sorry. So, patungan na lang natin. So, our point of view is seller. Who owns the goods? Again, pag shipping point, BSP, buyer pays shipping point. So, who paid for it will own it. So, who owns the goods in transit? The buyer. So, do we include or exclude this? So, in summary, number one, what type of goods is this? These are, sorry, clear. So, these are goods in transit. So, these are goods in transit, sold goods in transit. So, ikaw yung seller, dahil binayaran ng shipping point, from this point on, ang may-ari, from this point on, ang may-ari is si buyer already. So, do you own it? Yes or no? No. Nag-transfer na, right? Whoever paid for the freight will automatically get the ownership from that point on. So, inventory inclusion question, do we include or exclude? The answer is, we exclude, right? So, ganun lang. Inventory inclusion lang is, do we exclude or include? So, this case, we exclude. Next. On February 26, Grisel Inc. shipped goods to Toledo, FOB. So, again, next step is, let's analyze. Nag-ship raw ng goods to us. So, therefore, our POV, sino tayo? We're Toledo. We're the buyer in this situation. So, ano yung shipping terms? FOB destination. Who pays for FOB destination? SDP. So, who owns the goods? So, sino nagbayad? Who paid for freight? Dahil SDP, it's the seller. So, in summary, what do we know about this? This is a purchased goods in transit. Now, sa dial destination, magpapass lang yung ownership pag natanggap natin. Now, matatanggap lang natin siya on March 2. On March 2. On March 2 pa lang natin matatanggap. Right now, February 26. So, what do we do? Include or exclude? We exclude kasi we're on the month of February. February 28 pa lang, 26 shinip, pero March 2 pa lang natin matatanggap. So, we exclude. Next. Toledo had $500 of inventory at a customer's warehouse on approval. The customer was going to let Toledo know whether it wanted to purchase merchandise by the end of week, March 4. So ito is an example of number 4. Its own goods na temporarily pinahawak lang natin sa customer for their trial or for the approval. So, sino may-ari? Tayo pa rin. So, we include this. And then, next would be, may 400 inventory ka raw on consignment. So, meaning, may $400 worth of goods na ari mo, pero pinadala mo kay Balboa Craft Shop. So, do we own it? Yes. And therefore, for this consigned goods, we are the consignor. And therefore, we own the goods. And therefore, we include. Okay, next. Nag-order tayo ng goods costing 700. Nag-ship raw ng shipping point on February 27. So again, today is February 28. So nag-order tayo. Pag nag-order, anong POV? Our POV is from a buyer perspective. Shipping point. Who owns the goods? The one that pays the freight. Shipping point, BSP, buyer. So, POV natin buyer, we own the goods. Therefore, it's a purchase goods in transit. Nag-pass na yung ownership natin from the time na we paid the freight here. And therefore, while it's in transit, we own it already. And therefore, we include. And then lastly, on February 28, Toledo packaged good and had them ready for shipping. The price of the invoice was $350. The cost of the items was $250. The report indicates. So, ready for shipping pa lang. Ready for shipping. So, ano yung idea dito? These are what? These are sold goods in transit. It's FOB destination. We are the seller. Sa destination point, who owns the goods? The seller owns the goods because they paid for freight. Meaning, pag natanggap lang ni buyer, doon lang magta-transfer yung ownership. Therefore, we include this scenario. So last, had damaged goods set aside in the warehouse because they are no longer saleable. These goods originally cost and originally, so do we include damaged goods? Pag damaged goods, we exclude because they are no longer saleable. So, no longer sellable. So, pag no longer saleable and they're damaged goods, we exclude sa inventory. So, basically, ganun lang yung types of questions and exercises that you can expect when it comes to inventory inclusion. So, with that, we go na to a more comprehensive problem. So, again, this is solution. The story behind this is that may accountant raw that they already have the inventory balance at the year end of 740,000. However, hindi niya kinonsider yung mga items na to. So all of these, hindi niya ni-record or hindi niya kinonsider. So right now, may balance siya ng 740,000. Usually, pag inventory inclusion yung tanong, the question would be, ano ba yung correct inventory amount? So how do we answer this? So this is the framework na I'll give you in order to answer inventory inclusion problems. So number one is write down their year-end inventory. It's 740,000. Saan natin nakuha yung 740,000 again? From the given. The first question we ask would be, is it included? So in-include ba niya? Based on the 740,000. Yes or no? And the next, so the first question is it included yung item na to? And then, should it be included? And then, meron tayong different scenarios depending on the combination. So, let's do this line by line. Number one is, meron raw consigned goods with a cost of 250,000 that the company is holding on consignment. Ang importanting part dito is that the goods belong to Bakunin Corporation. So, is that our corporation? No. We're McHale. So, the first question is, sinama niya ba dun sa 740,000 itong 250,000 na to? Yes. Kasi it said included the company's count. So, they included it. Now, what is our analysis? These goods, physically with us, pero consigned lang. We're the consignee. The one who really owns it is Bakunin. So, we failed the legal test and therefore, should it be included in our inventory? No. Therefore, that 740,000, we need to carve out 250,000. Kasi sinama niya sa 740,000, sabi niya, yung 250,000 raw, inventory natin. That's wrong. We take that 250,000 out. Dapat. Right? So, ang ano dito is, if they include, but it should not be included, you subtract. You carve it out. Okay? Next item. The physical count did not include goods purchased. So, did not. So, the physical count Wait, kindly give me a moment. Just gonna test. Hi, testing. Okay. Okay, sorry. Sorry, there was a so next would be the physical count. Next item. The physical count did not include the goods. So is it included? No. So it was a purchase FOB destination. Did they include it? No. So the question is, should they include it? So nag-purchase raw siya ng cost of 40,000. So who are we? We are the buyer. FOB destination. Who owns the good pag FOB destination? SDP. The seller owns the goods in transit. We're the buyer. So do we own the goods? No. Therefore, should we include it? The answer is no. Therefore, did they include it? No. Is it included? No. Therefore, what do? We ignore. So wala. Tama yung pag-account natin. Doon sa 40,000. So pag hindi niya in-include and then it should have been included kung pareho lang to, we ignore. Third item. The third item is what? Included in the inventory account, so sinama niya, was 17,000 of office supplies. Office supplies. So these are supplies. Are supplies inventory? The answer is no. Right? It should not have been included. So, in-include ba niya dun sa 750,000 itong 17,000? Well, yes. Sabi niya included. Should that have been included? No. So pag in-include niya pero dapat hindi naman dapat, the answer is we carve out the 17,000 from the 740,000. So we subtract 17,000. So ang effect is minus 17,000. Next scenario. Number 4. The company received an order on December 29 na nakabox na and was sitting on the loading dock. The shipping terms was FOB shipping point. The goods had a selling price of 40,000. The goods were not included in the count. So, this is an example of a sale na FOB shipping. Number 1 question, sinama niya ba yung inventory doon sa count? No. Kasi nasa dock na raw. Now, the question is, should we have included it? Well, let's analyze. It's a sale. So, we're the seller. What is the term? FOB shipping point. Who owns the goods kapag shipping point? BSP. Buyer owns the goods. We're the seller. So, dapat hindi natin i-include. Therefore, tama lang na it should not, should it be included? Yes. So, basically, parang maguguluhan kayo. Why is it na in-include natin siya? Right? Because merong caveat or super important part itong number 4. So, ito yung babantayan natin. Correct to say na shipping point, buyer dapat yung may-ari. We're the seller. So, initial reaction nyo, it should not be included. But bakit siya yes? Because the goods are not yet in transit. It's still in the dock. Meaning, hindi niya pa, wala pa sa truck. So, syempre, yung buyer, pag-aari niya yun, pag nasa truck na, pero wala siya sa truck, nasa dock pa siya or nasa warehouse mo pa. So, technically, it should have been included. So again, the reason why I wanted to do that analysis is to just tell you na magugulat talaga kayo. Like, generally, kapag in transit, shipping point, buyer yung may-ari. Dahil seller tayo, you'd think dapat hindi niya in-include. But, the key fact here is that on December 29, the goods were not in transit. Nakabox lang siya dun sa warehouse. Hindi pa siya nasa freight. Therefore, it's any other ending inventory. Right? So now, kung hindi niya in-include but it should have been included, we add back 30,000. So add back 30,000. So please do a lot of exercises on this kasi may mga ganyang mga nuanced scenario. Right? So ito na yung first nuanced scenario that I want you to take note of. Okay. So that's one. And then number 2, on December 29, McHale shipped goods with a selling price of 80,000. So, nag-ship ulit siya. The goods arrived on January 3. However, a sales manager at McHale authorized the shipment and said that if wanted, so nagkaroon ng mistake. Nag-ship ka raw ng goods worth 60,000, pero ang in-order lang nila is 8,000. So anong gagawin natin? Ano yung sales return? Kasi ibabalik nila sa'yo yan eh. Like, out of the 30,000 or the 60,000 worth, 10,000 ang in-order nila. So, ano nangyari? Was it included? No. Because kala mo, nabenta mo na. Should it be included? Well, technically, yes. Yung unsold one. So, ano yung unsold? The unsold would be, yung cost niya 60,000, yun yung kala mo nabenta mo. Pero in reality, the cost is 8,000 lang. So, ano yung dapat i-add back? It should be 52,000. It's 60,000 na kala mo nabenta mo na, minus yung actually dapat nabenta mo lang of 8,000. So, 60 minus 8, 52,000. So, 52,000 we add back to the account. Kasi technically, 8,000 lang yung nabenta mo. And then lastly, included in the account was 40,000 of goods. So, this is obsolete. So, in-include niya. But it's no longer made. However, the management said na, hindi, i-keep na lang natin sa books kahit obsolete na siya. Is that correct? No. Kapag damaged or obsolete yung goods, we should not include that as inventory. Kasi hindi na natin mabibenta. It's no longer an asset. Therefore, they included it, but it should not have been included. Therefore, we carve it out. So, 40,000. So, what is the correct ending inventory? It should be 740,000. Sorry. 740,000. Sorry. 740,000 minus yung 250 for item 1. Walang effect yung item 2. Minus 17 of item 3. Plus 30 of item 4. Plus 52 na in-add back natin. And then minus 40. So, ang total correct ending inventory natin is 550. So, again, to summarize, pag inventory inclusion, the framework lang would be, first, take note of ano ba yung ni-record niya, 740,000. Then we ask ourselves, in-include ba niya? Or, in-include ba niya? Yes or no? Next is, should it be included? Yes or no? And then depending on the interaction, we either carve out, add back, or ignore. Kapag in-include niya, and dapat hindi naman, we carve out. Kapag in-include niya, ay hindi niya in-include pero tama naman na hindi in-include, i-ignore. Kapag in-include niya, kung in-include niya, kung hindi niya in-include pero dapat i-include, we add back. Right? And then, basically, using those different effects, we just compute. So 740 minus 250 minus 17 plus 30 plus 52 plus minus 40 is 550. So with that, we're done with our first major topic, inventory inclusion. So my suggestion is, if you're watching this at home, take a break muna and then redo that item again, right? So now we go to recognizing inventory or our cost flow assumptions.